Hi guys, it's Blackie and welcome back to the channel. Okay, today we're going to do a do-it-yourself project. Now whenever we're doing gear and stuff like that, often we need to have smaller pouches that go into our haversack or whatever. And in the top flap of my haversack, I carry a small little cinch bag that I made. All it is a simple piece of canvas. So we're going to make something like this today. Now why? I do it for several reasons. One is to protect what's in it. Because in that top flap, there's all kinds of stuff jumbling around. A little bit of dirt can get in there and stuff like that. I want to keep things protected. So inside of this little pouch, I keep my backup compass. Now as you can see, this is a clear Lexan plate, and then there's a clear lens on that compass. If this was in there rubbing on dirt and sand as you walk along and scratching, it'd get so scratched up you couldn't read it. So from experience, I learned to make a little bitty liner, something to protect it. Plus the fact that with it in here, in that pouch, even in the dark, when I stick my hand in there and I start feeling around, I know exactly what that is by the feel of it. By the texture of the material and the size of it, I know that's my compass. So if I'm looking for that in the dark, or whatever else might be in here, say a first aid kit full of band-aids or whatever, I can tell by feel what it is. Even if I don't have a light, I can tell what it is without having to dump out each individual one and play the charade of what is this, what is this. I can tell what's in that pouch. So we're going to make one of these do-it-yourself little bitty pouches. Now, this is recycled canvas from an earlier project. And we're going to recycle a piece of material here in a minute. There's a seam running up both sides. So this is just simply a long piece of material folded in half to make it, and then the top lips have been rolled. We're going to show this in a minute when I make one for you and be able to put the cinch cord in. But they're simple to make. You do not have to have a sewing machine. I believe I made this on a sewing machine, but you could do it by hand. And we're going to begin by talking about how we can do it by hand. So, let me set the camera up. We're going to lay out the material. We're going to show you how we make a pattern, and then we actually cut out our material and sew it. So stay with me. Okay, we've got roughly what we want to make right here. So we've got an idea. First thing we got to do is make a pattern. Now, if I'm going to fold it in half, which is the way I'm going to do it, I need to make sure it's as wide, but actually a little bit wider. Because when I fold over and sew the seams, that's going to take up a little bit of space. So if I cut it at the full size of this, it'll actually be smaller when I make it. So I've got to add a little bit of size to it. And so we're going to figure about 1 finger to allow for what's called seam allowance, because that's where they're going to fold and be sewn together. So we're going to call that about 1 finger. Same thing up here at the top, because that top is folded over and sewed to make the tube for the cord to go through. So that's got to be folded over as well. So we're going to get up here and we're going to move it over about 1 finger worth. It ain't got to be exact, but about 1 finger worth. We're going to take and draw a rough line down to there. And remember, we got to come up here, we're going to move it up about 1 finger worth right there, and we're going to come across. Now we're going to connect those 2 lines. So this will be that, but remember, this is folded. So it's double this size. So it's going to go that way. So to make that easy, we're simply going to line up and cut it up to that point, stop, and now we're going to fold it over the other way, just like that. Take that, trace that line, just like that, and now we've got the other half. Cut that out. Okay, now we've got the rough pattern. But let's do something we call truing the pattern. We're going to fold it. Remember, this edge was already cut before we started, so I'm going to line it up and make sure, and I'm going to look on this side and see it's not exactly even. That's the reason I'm going to line it up, make sure it's well lined up, and then I'm going to very carefully right here on the edge cut straight up to make it even on both sides. If you don't do this, what can happen is it'll kind of twist when you go to sew, because those edges are not exactly even, so it wants to steer it a little bit like English. That trues up my pattern. Okay? Now, up here at the top, this will fold over about 1/4 inch, about like that. And that will form where that pull string's got to go. Same thing on this one, folding to the same side, about 1/4 inch. Just like that. Making sure they're folded the same size. Now when they come together, they'll line up. Okay? Alright. Now we're going to transfer this to our material. Straighten that back out. Our material we're going to use, I'm recycling an old pair of work pants that I've cut apart already and utilized for things. So I'm simply going to line up my pattern someplace where it'll line up and cut me out a hunk of material to use. It seems to be roughly about right. I'm going to take and mark it onto the material. Okay, there's a rough outline of what we need. Notice it's fraying on this end, so we'll want to work around that. Alright, now we take and cut it out of the material. Okay, move my extra material. Remember, this end down here is frayed out a little bit, so we're going to fix that. We're going to cut it off so it's nice and square into all the good material, eliminating that frayed. Okay, now we're going to fold this material in half just like we did before, and line it out and make sure it's all lining up fairly good. It can be off by a little tiny amount, but not by a whole lot. Alright, that seems to be okay. Now we're ready to start sewing. Let me get set up for that. Okay, thread. There is thick thread, and then there is thin thread. Now this is colored. You can match the color to the bag. So if you want, like, remember my example there that I just had, there it is, where you can't see any of the seams because those seams are going to be on the inside, but it was white thread sewing it, so you don't really see a contrasting thread. You can use contrasting thread to be able to stand out and mark the pouch somehow, so the two pouches are alike, but one sewed with blue thread and one sewed with red thread, and that would indicate two different things to me when I'm sorting through the bag. That can work. All it matters is it's a fairly strong thread. That's what's important. Now I'm going to be using this pre-waxed thread right here, and I've got a needle with a fairly large eye in it. Now let me get it all laced up and ready to go. How much thread do you cut? I'm going to be sewing across the top edges first to be able to make that pocket for my cinch cord to go into. And so I need that to go all the way there and back a half. So just take double and add just a little bit, and that should be enough thread. So I'm going to measure 1, 2 and a half, and that should be enough thread to do that. Then I take it. I'm trying to use the force without putting my glasses on yet. Take the thumb down, make sure that thing's flat so it'll go through that hole. We line it up and we go through. Yay, we're on it. Now on the far end we're going to tie a knot. Now yes, you could double the thread, and if you're using thin thread like this, I'd say double it. Just, you know, double the length, tie the two ends together, make a big loop. And I'm going to take the end that's sticking up, they just went in, and I'm going to twist that down kind of tight with my fingers because I want it to be easy to pull through the material. Okay? Now I'm going to take that top edge. Which side is going to be the outside? This one's kind of faded on one side and light on the other. So I'm going to make the faded side the side that's going to be on the outside. So I want to pull this loop to the inside. Now, when you go to sew it, do not, I'm going to scoop that up just a little bit, don't need quite that much. Don't start in the very corner and come across, it'll fray out. Start like a 1/2 inch from it, go to the corner and then double back. When you get to this end, turn back around and come a 1/2 inch in. That reinforces these stress points and keeps it from pulling out there. So, I'm going to start right here. I'm going to punch through. I'm going to double the material in half, and I'm going to come back up through it. Just like that. Hope you can see that well. Now I'm going to wiggle and take this thread through. Just like that. Pulling it up to that knot. Now I'm going to go in and out, straight through, wiggle it, pull it, come back, through it, staying at about the same line. And I'm going to go all the way around. See, now I've just come out on that side. I'm going to go around to the back side and start coming so that this thread goes across the top and kind of pinches and keeps those two bottom pieces pulled tight together. So I'm going to come from the back side to make that happen. Sewing is a lot like just lacing your shoes. Once you figure out how to do it, it's super simple. Alright, now that I've got it started, now I'm going to go all the way across. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Okay. Now I've made a line of stitches all the way across. Now when you get like 1 inch or 2 across, maybe this could be a longer where I'm sewing a bigger piece. But once you get a couple of inches in, here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab the material and just pull the material to pull the material flat, and then pinch the end that's already sewed, take the other end and grab the thread and kind of pull it straight. That keeps any wavy patterns that where you puckered up the material or you puckered up a thread as you're doing it. By pull the material and then pull the thread, you'll flatten that out and make it smoother. Now I've got all the way to this end. I'm going to come over the top and punch back through, and that will cause that end right there to pinch that end to protect it. And then I'm going to go back uphill again, or back over what I've already done, that little 1/2 inch back. That will reinforce it and keep this from opening up, because with use what's going to happen is you pulling on it, tugging on it, etc. This thing's coiling up and uncoiling to cinch the bag up. It will stretch the threads there at this very junction, and it'll pop loose and the seam will start running. So by doing it this way, starting not on the very end, but in and going to the end and coming back, you're reinforcing. So I've come all the way to this end now, and I'm going back to reinforce it. And one more. Making sure that I want the final knot to be on the inside, and this is going to be on the inside. So I'm going to come in, and here's how I'm going to finish it off. I'm going to come to this side. I'm going to take one of these threads I've already, right there is a thread that I've already sewed. I'm going to go underneath it, just like that. And then I'm going to go through that loop I just made, just like that. And that ties that down. Now I'm going to do it again. I'm going to come underneath the material, not going all the way through, but just as one side, so to speak. Poke up. And I'm going to turn around and go back through that loop. I pull that down tight, cinch it up, and I can cut that off. Now that has formed a loop pocket for the cinch cord to go through. And we're going to get to the cinch cord in a minute. Now I'm going to go do the other end, and then I'll be back with you and I'll show you how we lace it up and get ready to sew the rest of it. Okay, now I have completely sealed up both ends. I've got the tubes folded over, and that forms a tube through the end. The seam is on this side, the seam is on this side, so that when I put them like that, the seams are on the opposite sides. That means that when I turn this inside out, they'll be on the inside, because I still got to sew up both sides, correct? Now comes the part that confuses a lot of people. Putting in the cinch into it, the pull cord. And I'm going to be using bank line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a piece that's really a little bit too long, to be honest. And you can do this several ways. You can take a fine piece of wire and run through there. If you've got a stiff something, you can push it through. Maybe even taking a needle, a long needle, and forcing it through. But the object of the game is we got to lace it through. Now I have and you can get these at any place that sells sewing machines, stuff like that. It's a wire that's got a little fine hook on the end, and it's called a threading tool. It's for certain sewing machines and stuff. But this is what I'm going to use for this. Now what the cord needs to do, and here is my 2 layers, it needs to go in, go in, come out, go into the back one, come out, go back in, go back, come through this one again, and then go back that, so the 2 cinches are on this side. That is a double loop, so that when I cinch it up, they will constrict and hold the position. A single loop will just open back up. You pull it, but any slack and it'll come back. But a double loop will constrict up. And so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to thread through, and I'm going to hook that bank line on it. We'll see if I can pull that knot through. Okay, came through. Alright, that's one. Now I'm going to come through the back side. I'm going to hook it on there. Just like that. Give myself plenty of slack. There we go, pull through. Now I'm going to go back through this side. Alright, first direction. Pull it through there. Come out, grab the loose end, pull it in. And it's going to be a little fiddly. Alright, I've got it through. Now, see how it's starting to constrict up. I need to give myself more slack. There, now I've got enough to go through the back one last time to make the complete loop. So I'm going to come through the back, hook in my cord, like that, pull it back through, and now that cord is looped all the way through. Now I'm going to pull it so it's just up a little bit snug. See how much I'm leaving myself? And I'm going to cut that off a little bit long because I can always cut it shorter later. Tie a knot. Right there and that. So my bank line doesn't fray out. Take my new end that I just cut off, I just threaded through. I'm going to tie a knot in that one. And I'm going to take both ends and I'm going to put them together. I'm going to do a simple overhand and cinch them up. So that it's one knot at the end, so to speak. Making sure to keep both lines even when I do it. Just like that. Okay, so now that cord has, to recap, the cord has gone through the front, turned, gone through the back, turned, gone back through the front, turned, gone back through the back, and those have been tied together to form the cinch cord. Now when I pull it up, you see how it wants to cinch up. It will cinch up. Now all I got to do is just sew up the sides. To do that, since my cords have already lined up my tops by putting it on now, and I will adjust those cords to make them even, because you know, pulling and pushing and pulling, it's going to cinch and stuff, but I want to make it lay flat. Now I'm going to sew up these two sides that are open. We're going to do it exactly the way we did before, starting in like a 1/2 inch from the bottom. We're going to sew down reverse direction and come all the way up, staying about 1/8 of an inch or something right off that edge. Don't get right up against the edge, it'll fray off. I want to be back down in the material about like 1/8 or a 1/16 of an inch. Say a 1/16 of an inch in, up and down, and then I'll sew up this side. Now let me sew that up and I'll be back with it and we'll turn it inside out. Okay, now I've completely sewed up this side. I'm going to do this and I want to show you how this stitch works. See how the way it's rolled over? Okay, I use this stitch for along the edge of a raw edge, and this is raw edge. That means if I start picking at it, it'll start fraying. See that, like that thread right there, I can just pull it. So what I'm going to do is I have started and I've sewed just straighten out to there. And now what I'm going to do is I've punched through, I'm going to go through, put my thread down, and next time, since it's on the far side now, I'm going to come over the top and come back to this side, and I'm going to go back through. Pull that down. Sometimes this wax thread kinks up. Make sure that loop goes to the top. Now when I pull it, it's going to roll that top edge over toward me. Now I bring it over the top again. I go right next to it. I go through again, pull that thread over, and pull. Making sure to kind of guide that loop up over the top, and boom. Now every time I sew, it's going to be go through, come over the top. Go through, come over the top. So I go through, I take the thread and I put it over back of the needle and hold it with my thumb, and I pull through. And what it's going to do is going to roll that edge over toward me and keep it from fraying. How far do you space your stitches, Blackie? Typically I space them about 30 seconds, something like that, apart. And you just simply, I just move out a given space and kind of where my edge of my thumb is and that last stitch, that's how I space it. I set it up there and move my finger out of the way, I stick my needle in, bring it over the top, pull the spaghetti down, and pull down. You see how it's rolling and making a more of a finished edge. It keeps it from fraying out. That's what I'm doing. Okay, let me get all the way to this end. I will go from that end all the way to this, and then when I get to this end, I'll double back and come down about a 1/2 inch, and then I'll tie it off, simply hooking back through my original stitches I made coming up and tying off like I did on this side. So you can see it's reinforced all the way from here all the way to there and back, and it's rolled the edge over. This makes a seam that's kind of tough and doesn't fray out easily. Good for a small bag. Okay, here's our pouch. Now, to recap, I measured out and made a pattern, allowing for the seams and the full length. I then took it and took my material, I folded over toward me, sewed, turned the material around, folded over toward me, sewed to give me these two pockets. I then folded the material in half, putting that ragged seam to the outside. So when I turn it inside out, it'll now be smooth. You won't see this. Then I began down here and I sewed and brought it over the top and sewed, brought it over the top, sewed to the corner. Then I reversed direction, sewed over the top, sewed over the top all the way up here to the end. Then I came back down a ½ inch. When I got to where I wanted to stop, I came over and then I angled the needle and went back through parts I'd already sewed. Brought it out, did that 2 times, went through, came through, tied it in a knot, done. That's got it secured. I laced and put, using a tool, I put my cinch cord in. To recap, that is, I started from this side, on the side closest to me. I went through, then I went through the back side, came out, went back through the closed side, went back through the back side, and that left me with the 2 ends sticking out here and a double loop inside. Now it's all sewed. Let's turn it inside out. We're going to open it and we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to push it up through the hole. This is called turning it. And depending on the materials, how stiff this is going to be and how easy it is. Some materials are kind of tough to do this, to be honest. Alright. Sometimes you want a little tool like a chopstick or a pencil or a pen or whatever, especially when you're talking about in the very corners down here, to get them to roll out. And there is our cinch stack. Now see how the seams are? Because we sewed on the inside, these seams ain't frayed out. The edge is protected. It's on the inside. And now whenever we grab it and pull for it to cinch up, see it closes up tightly. Now all I got to do is cinch it up, put a ½ hitch in right there, pull it down, and that will stay closed with something in it. All to open it, I got to do is just pull, grab the top and pull it and wiggle it a little bit to get it to open all the way back up. That is a simple cinch sack. Okay, here's a little extra tip or trick for you. I finished up and I've got a pretty good piece of thread left on my needle. Here's what you can do. I've got it all set to go. I'm going to take and twist the needle and I'm going to start spiraling that thread up onto my needle. I go down here pretty close to the end and I'm going to reverse direction and come back to the top just like this. Whole time threading it, guiding it I should say, as I twist it up tight. Reverse direction. Now when I get it down here at the end, there's the little tab left at the end of it. Now that I can put into a sewing kit or into some other little kit to make it easy to have thread to grab, because if I grab that and unwind it, I got 1.5 foot of thread ready to do a repair. So if you got extra needle and a little extra thread and you go ahead and put it in your kit, you got a repair ready to go. You don't have to thread the needle, it's already threaded. So, upcycling an old pair of work pants. They were kind of like Carhartt canvas that I saved them to do this. A piece of cardboard, a piece of paper, something to make a pattern. An idea of what you wanted, you can make a copy of pretty easily that way. These simple cinch pouches are really easy to make. Just a little bit of bank line, a little bit of thread and a needle. That's it. Now this can work as any kind of small container pouch in the pack. Like I said, I carry my little compass in here. by carrying my little emergency backup compass, which has got a set of pacing beads on it, putting them into a little bitty pouch like this, I protect it. It's not laying in the bag and grinding up against something else. I can simply pull now, and that's going to cinch it up. With this one, I can cinch it up and go around, thread back through, just like that. Cinch that sucker up good and tight, go around the opposite way, cinch it, and pull. And there's a gathered up bag that I can open up. Now, how could I mark this for what's in it? Take a magic marker and mark on it compass, first aid, sewing kit, whatever it is you want to make it out of. Making your bags out of different materials so I can tell by feel in the dark what that bag is. So if, let's say, I got a real silky pair of pajamas or something that's being thrown away, something got spilled on, my wife spilled it on one of her silky night shirts, I can recycle that into bags, can I? Silky bags be really good and tough. How about old work shirts? How about old work pants? Blue jeans, whatever. All of them can be turned into small pouches for various pieces of gear. Very simply, very easily. Sewing is not difficult. And for those of you that have never tried it, all hand sewing is lacing, just like you lace up your boots. You're going to go in, come over the top and go in, or go in and out. It's super simple. Sewing is something I was taught by my grandmother because it was a way to teach me how to focus, to be calm, to be very careful with what I was doing, because once you stick that finger a couple times that needle, you don't want to do it no more. You'll pay attention now. How you space out your stitches, which stitch you're using, the one that just goes in and out like that, or the one that comes up and over the top, or two needles. There's a lot of different stitching sewing techniques depending on what we're sewing. I would sew leather differently than I sewed a little cinch sack out of this, but it's a beginning position. And then of course the next step up, for those of you that may not know how to sew much or have never tried sewing, is a stitcher, what's called a speedy stitcher. Fantastic. And I have showed so many people who had never tried sewing before how to use a speedy stitcher. Super easy once you figure it out, and it's very simple to figure out, and you can sew really good quality leather, heavy canvas. You can sew your own haversack and stuff in. So today we made a small cinch sack. In a future episode, if this one goes well, and if you guys are wanting me to show more of this do-it-yourself type stuff, I'll show you how to make a bag for your bush pot. It's got a flat bottom on it so it stands up. That'll be in a coming episode if you guys want me to. Hope you've enjoyed this content. If you please hit that like, share, and subscribe, and comment for me to help feed the algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.